Let's begin with a theory that feels like a slow-burning fire, something ancient, something patient, a theory that, like the North itself, never forgets. It begins with a simple phrase whispered often in Westeros: "The North remembers." On the surface, it's a statement of loyalty, of stubbornness. But when you look deeper, some fans believe it's not just the North's people who remember, it's the land itself. The North remembers because the old gods remember. Because the very trees, the soil, and the rivers are soaked with memory. You see, the Starks, ancient blood of the first men, are tied more closely to the old gods than any other house. Their words are simple. Winter is coming. Not a boast, not a threat, a warning. According to this theory, the Starks were chosen, not by politics, not by wars or marriages, but by something older, by the old gods themselves, spirits that are said to live in the heart trees, in the weirwoods with their bleeding faces and silent judgment. When the first men crossed into Westeros thousands of years ago, it was the North where they made their peace with the children of the forest. It was the North that stayed faithful when the South turned to the faith of the Seven. And it is the North, always cold, always harsh, that holds the line against the darkness that comes with the long night. Some believe that's why the direwolves returned at the start of the series, not by accident, but because the North was waking up, the Starks were waking up, and winter was coming. Each Stark child was given a direwolf, one to match them, protect them, walk beside them. These direwolves weren't just pets. They were totems, reminders that the old magic still breathed through the blood of House Stark, magic that would be needed again when the dead rose. Think about it. Bran's awakening as a greenseer, Jon's deep bond with Ghost, Arya's warging instincts. Even without training, these gifts weren't random. They were blood calling to blood, the old gods arming their champions. And when we remember the crypts beneath Winterfell, ancient, endless, we realize the Starks have been preparing for a war they barely understood. Statues of kings who never wore crowns, tombs sealed in stone, swords laid across the laps of the dead. Some say those swords were placed there to keep something in, not just as a symbol of honor, to bind spirits, to hold ancient forces sleeping beneath the ice and rock. If the North remembers, it's because it must. Because forgetting would mean doom. Because the old gods never forget their promises or their vengeance. And so, every time we see a Stark facing hardship, Bran falling from a tower, Sansa surviving in King's Landing, Jon Snow standing alone on the wall, we're not just seeing random suffering. We're seeing the long preparation, the hardening of steel, the forging of the North's last great defense. When the long night returns, the North must be ready. And it remembers always, because the old gods whisper still among the trees, a whisper that might yet save the world. If we listen closely, past the clanging of swords and the roaring of dragons, there's another song that drifts through the halls of Westeros, a softer song, sadder, more complicated. It's the story of Rhaegar Targaryen, and a theory that maybe, just maybe, we've misunderstood him all along. The official history paints Rhaegar as the man who started a war by stealing Lyanna Stark, a golden prince turned reckless, who brought death to thousands for love. But the more you look at it, the more the cracks start to show. Was Rhaegar truly just a selfish lover? Or was he a prince who knew more than he could ever safely say? A man burdened by prophecy, desperate to save the world? According to this theory, Rhaegar's actions were never about personal desire. They were about preparing Westeros for the long night. You see, the Targaryens have always been tied to prophecy, dreams that bend the future, visions that echo through generations. It's said that Rhaegar grew up different after reading a prophecy in a dusty old tome, a dream that whispered of darkness swallowing the world. He believed it was his destiny, or his bloodline's destiny, to stand against it, the prince that was promised, the song of ice and fire. First, he thought he was the hero himself. Then, as he grew older and wiser, he realized the truth. The hero would be his child. But not just any child, the right child, born from the right blood. At first, Rhaegar tried with Elia Martell, his Dornish wife. They had Rhaenys and Aegon, two beautiful children. But Elia was frail. The maesters warned she couldn't bear another. And Rhaegar, desperate, driven, knew he needed a third. Head of the dragon, enter Lyanna Stark, a northern girl tied to the ancient blood of the first men, the old gods, the icy power of the land itself, a union of fire and ice. According to the theory, Rhaegar didn't steal Lyanna. They chose each. Other, a secret marriage, a hidden child, Jon Snow, born Aegon Targaryen. But Westeros wasn't ready for the truth. Robert Baratheon, fueled by personal rage and heartbreak, would never have accepted it. The realm would have torn itself apart. Not because Rhaegar was evil, but because change often looks like betrayal. And so the war came. Rhaegar died on the Trident. Lyanna died in a tower. Thousands more died without ever knowing the real reason. When you think of it this way, Rhaegar's life becomes a tragedy of silence. A man who saw the future, but couldn't save it. A man who died trying to forge a weapon against the dark, and whose son, raised under another name, would one day answer the call. In the end, maybe Rhaegar wasn't the villain. Maybe he was the last desperate hope of a dying world. And the song he tried to sing, the song of ice and fire, still echoes, soft and sorrowful, across the cold fields of Westeros. Because sometimes saving the world doesn't look like glory. It looks like failure. It looks like loss. But it still matters all the same. If there's one character who changed more than anyone across the long, winding road of Game of Thrones, it's Bran Stark, the boy who fell from a tower. The boy who learned to fly without wings. The boy who became something other than a boy. But what if Bran's transformation wasn't as simple as gaining wisdom? What if, somewhere along the way, he crossed a line he could never uncross? There's a theory, dark, slow-moving like the fog beyond the wall, that Bran Stark didn't just become the three-eyed raven. He became something far worse, something ancient, something cold. Some believe Bran Stark is the Night King. It sounds impossible at first, but if you listen closely to the whispers of the past, the theory starts to take shape. Bran has the ability to travel through time, not just seeing the past, but reaching into it. We saw him touch Hodor's mind across decades. We saw him call out to his father in the courtyard of Winterfell, and somehow Ned Stark heard him. The old magic runs deep, deeper than even Bran understands. According to this theory, as the Night King marched south, Bran grew desperate to stop him, and so he tried to go back thousands of years, to the moment the first White Walker was created. The moment when the children of the forest, using dragonglass and dark magic, turned a man into a monster to protect themselves against the first men. Bran tried to change it, tried to stop it. But when he entered the mind of that man, he became trapped. His consciousness merged with the victims, fused by the ancient spells, locked in place. Unable to stop the transformation, unable to leave. And so Bran Stark, the boy who loved to climb towers, who dreamed of nights and adventures, became the Night King, a being of endless winter, a prisoner in a body not fully his own. It would explain why the Night King moves the way he does. Slowly, purposefully, almost regretfully, not mindless like the Whites, but focused, as if driven by some forgotten mission. It would explain why he marks Bran during their visions, not to kill him immediately, but to reach out, to recognize a part of himself. It would explain why the Night King doesn't just sweep into Westeros with overwhelming force. Why he hesitates, why he seems to search for something. He's not simply trying to destroy, he's trying to end the curse, to end the endless cycle that Bran accidentally created, and there's something unbearably tragic about it. The idea that Bran's greatest act of courage, reaching back to save the world, became his own undoing, that in trying to stop the darkness, he became its heart. But if that's true, it changes the meaning of the final battle. It's not just humans against monsters. It's Bran against Bran, hope against regret, the living against the living's greatest mistake. And in the end, maybe the Night King isn't just evil. Maybe he's something much sadder. A reminder that even the purest intentions, when twisted by time and magic, can lead to ruin. A boy who wanted to fly and fell into the longest night of all. Down in the dark earth, beneath the cold stones of Winterfell, lies a place few dare to speak of for long. The crypts of Winterfell, silent, ancient, and impossibly deep. At first glance, they seem simple. A family's resting place, a monument to House Stark's long, proud history, kings of winter, lords of the north, each laid to rest with a solemn promise that even in death they would watch over their people. But if you lean in closer, if you sit by the cold statues and let the chills settle into your bones, you might hear another story, a theory whispered like an old lullaby in the winds above the battlements. Some believe the crypts aren't just tombs, they're a prison, a place to hold something back, and not just spirits or memories, something alive or half alive sealed away in darkness. You see, the crypts go far deeper than anyone can explain, deeper than even Maester Luwin could map, deeper than any Stark alive remembers building. Some say they were there before the castle itself, before Winterfell was even founded. The first Stark kings, the kings of winter, ruled not just with swords, but with ancient magic. They fought against the others during the first long night, and when it ended, when the wall was raised, the Starks remained vigilant, guardians against a second coming. According to this theory, some dark force, a defeated enemy, a corrupted bloodline, a cursed king, was sealed in the deepest crypts, buried under stone and time, kept in check by spells carved into the statues, by the swords laid across each figure's lap. The swords weren't ornaments. They were seals. And over time, as the old knowledge faded, the living forgot what they were guarding. They remembered the honor. They forgot the danger. It's why the crypts are always described as unsettling, even to the Starks themselves. Why Robb, Jon, and Arya all feel a heavy, watchful presence when they walk those halls. Why Bran's visions often pull him downward into that cold stone maze. It's why, when the Night King attacked Winterfell, he sent the dead rising from the crypts. Because he knew. He remembered. The dead Starks, ancient, proud, and terrifying, were no longer just memories. In a world where magic stirred, they too could rise again. And maybe, just maybe, something older than even the Night King still sleeps down there, waiting, hungering. Some fans even whisper that Bran the Builder, the legendary founder of House Stark and the Wall, wasn't just a hero. He was a jailer, and Winterfell is named not for a season, but for an ancient battle, a victory carved in ice and stone, but never complete. The crypts then are not monuments, they are warnings, the last defense against whatever stirs in the frozen bones of history. So the next time you imagine Winterfell, don't just think of warm halls and howling wolves. Think of the silence beneath, the endless stone steps spiraling downward, the cold breath of things too old to die. And remember, in the north, even the dead are not to be trusted. Arya Stark was never meant for the silks and whispers of a lady's life. From the beginning, she was wild, a wolf in the skin of a noble daughter, sharp, fast, stubborn. But when she lost everything, her father, her home, her innocence. Her journey took her somewhere far darker than even the frozen woods of the north. It took her to the House of Black and White, where faces hung like masks. And death was a god with 1,000 smiles. Arya trained to become no one, to shed her identity, to serve the many-faced god, the god of death itself. But here's the question. This soft, unsettling theory asks, did Arya Stark ever really leave that house? Or did she make a deeper deal, one she can never truly escape? Some believe that Arya's final return to Westeros, her reunion with her family, her vengeance against the Freys, her battles in the north, was not the story of a girl finding her way home. It was the story of a girl repaying a debt. Because the many-faced god always demands a price, and death is not easily cheated. According to this theory, Arya's greatest victories, killing Walder Frey, surviving the long night, even her final journey west of Westeros, were all part of a bargain she made when she trained among the faceless men. Not every price is paid at once. Some are paid in service, some in soul. Maybe Arya was allowed to keep her face, her memories, her Stark blood, but in exchange, she carries the many-faced god's will with her, silently. Forever. Think of how easily she embraces death now, how fearlessly she speaks to it, dances with it. Killing isn't a last resort for Arya, it's almost natural, beautiful even. She says the names of those she will kill like prayers: Walder Frey, Meryn Trant, Cersei Lannister, the Night King. Each death a small offering. Each life a whispered prayer to the god that gave her back her own. And when her list grows short and the blood dries on her blade, what then? Maybe that's why she sails west of Westeros. Not just to explore, but because her service isn't finished. Because somewhere across the waves new faces wait to be claimed. New deaths must be served. Arya is a Stark, a wolf of the north. But maybe in some hidden part of her heart, she is something else now too. Something colder, something older. A handmaiden of death. A wandering shadow, answering to a god that wears every face, and none. In the end, Arya's journey wasn't just about survival. It was about transformation. And maybe the most tragic part of all is that, after everything she lost, family, innocence, childhood, she still lost herself too, not all at once, but piece by piece, with every face she wore, until one day she looked into the glassy sea stretching westward, and saw not a Stark girl looking back, but a stranger with a wolf's heart and a god's patience. And she sailed onward into the unknown. Across the sea, past the smouldering ruins and the whispering waves, there lies a scar on the world so vast that even the dragons fled from it. Valyria. Once, it was the greatest empire in history. A shining city of endless spires, dragons soaring like sparks over gleaming marble streets, the masters of magic, of fire and blood, who tamed volcanoes and bent the world to their will. And then, in a single day, it was gone. The Doom of Valyria, a cataclysm so total that even its cause has been lost to myth. A land torn by earthquakes, oceans swallowing cities, mountains vomiting fire and ash, a civilization erased almost overnight. The official histories call it an accident, a natural disaster, too much magic, too much greed. But some whisper a different story, a theory that the Doom wasn't an accident at all. It was an assassination, a mass murder of an entire culture. The Valyrians had unlocked powers that frightened even themselves. They worked spells of blood, binding spirits and summoning creatures from beyond the mortal plane. They weren't just dragon lords. They were gods of fire, playing games far too dangerous. According to the theory, a secret faction within Valyria, possibly even the slaves, or a rogue branch of dragon lords, conspired to destroy it. Not out of hatred, but out of desperation. because the sorcery brewing in Valyria's deepest chambers, hidden beneath the smoking mountains, had reached a breaking point. Spells that could tear the fabric of reality itself, weapons that could wake the sleeping gods of old. The only way to stop it was to destroy the source completely, to break the world in order to save it. And so, carefully, quietly, they worked. Some believe the conspirators tampered with the volcanoes that cradled the freehold. Some whisper that a forgotten spell was unleashed, a final suicidal act of magic. Whatever the truth, the result was the same: fire, blood, and the death of an empire. The survivors, the few who escaped, like House Targaryen, didn't flee by accident either. According to the theory, the Targaryens knew. Daenerys, the dreamer, the girl who foresaw the doom, warned her family years before it happened. But was it truly a vision of fate? Or was it knowledge whispered in the dark by those who planned the destruction? The Targaryens abandoned Valyria, not just because of a dream, but because they understood. They were chosen, or perhaps complicit, in preserving the dragon's blood while letting the empire die. And so Dragonstone became a refuge, a memory of what once was, a reminder that even the greatest power can be snuffed out by its own hand. When you think of it this way, the doom isn't just a tragedy, it's a warning echoing across the centuries. A reminder that unchecked ambition, untempered magic, leads only to ashes. Even Daenerys, centuries later, carries the weight of that warning. Dragons are not just creatures of wonder. They are echoes of Valyria's greatest sin and greatest sorrow. The fall of Valyria wasn't the end of an age. It was the price of hubris. And somewhere, deep beneath the boiling seas and broken mountains, the fires still burn, waiting, because magic never truly dies. It only sleeps, waiting for a new hand bold or foolish enough to wake it again. In the grand game of thrones, every piece matters. Every name, every drop of blood has a part to play. And few pieces are more fascinating, more tragic than Tyrion Lannister, the imp of Casterly Rock, the broken son, the cleverest mind in all of Westeros. But what if Tyrion's story is even bigger than anyone suspects? There's a theory, slow and sorrowful as a song sung in empty halls, that Tyrion Lannister isn't truly a Lannister at all, that he's a Targaryen, the lost son of a mad king and a stolen mother. It starts with the hints Tywin Lannister, himself left behind, often in fits of rage, often when the mask slipped. "You are no son of mine. I cannot prove you are mine." Words said in anger, yes, but why such venom? Why such shame burning so fiercely? According to this theory, Tyrion's mother, Joanna Lannister, was once the object of King Aerys II's dangerous obsession. When she served at court as a lady-in-waiting, Aerys lusted after her openly, even insulting Tywin by making coarse jokes at her expense. Some say Aerys went further than words. Some whisper he forced himself upon her during a royal visit to Casterly Rock. 9 months later, Tyrion was born. A birth soaked in blood and death. Joanna died, bringing him into the world, her body broken, her spirit lost. Tywin's grief twisted into something colder, not sorrow, but hatred. Because every time he looked at Tyrion, with his mismatched eyes, his pale blonde hair not quite like a Lannister's gold, he saw the living proof of humiliation. Not a son, a reminder. A dragon, not a lion. There's more. Tyrion's fascination with dragons runs deeper than simple curiosity. As a boy, he dreamed of them, sketched them, read about them obsessively. Even when dragons were thought extinct, Tyrion believed. And when he meets Daenerys' dragons at last, they do not kill him. When he touches them, they do not recoil. He frees Rhaegar and Viserion from their chains, a dangerous act, and yet they allow it, as if recognizing kin, because in Westeros, dragons bow only to those of Valyrian blood. If Tyrion is a Targaryen, it reweaves the entire tapestry of the story. He would be Daenerys' half-brother. He would be another head of the dragon, completing the prophecy. The dragon must have 3 heads. Daenerys, Jon Snow, Tyrion, fire, ice, and wit. But this isn't just a story of secret heritage. It's a tragedy of identity. Tyrion spends his whole life trying to earn his father's love, trying to belong to a family that scorns him. And if this theory is true, he never had a chance. He was born of 2 worlds, the lion and the dragon, and belonged fully to neither, a soul stitched together by fate, by blood, by betrayal. A boy who dreamed of dragons, only to learn one day that the fire burning inside him was never meant for the halls of Casterly Rock. It was meant for the skies. In the end, Tyrion's real tragedy isn't that he's unloved, it's that he's misplaced. A dragon forced to live among lions, wearing a skin that never quite fit, carrying a heart too big, too fierce for the golden chains that tried to hold it. In the long shadow of the past, across frozen fields and ruined castles, there's one name that echoes louder than most: Bran the Builder. The boy who built the wall, the boy who raised Winterfell, the boy who founded House Stark, shaping the future of the North with his bare hands. Or so the legends say. But if you let your mind drift, if you listen to the winds that whistle over the wall, you'll hear another theory, whispered like an old, half-forgotten prayer. Maybe Bran wasn't just a boy at all. Maybe Bran the Builder was something else, something more, and something stranger. You see, the legends say Bran lived during the Age of Heroes, a time when magic and mankind walked side by side, a time when giants still roamed and the children of the forest whispered spells into the roots of the world. How could a human boy, and no matter how clever, have built structures so massive, so enduring, that they defy even the maesters' understanding? The wall alone is an impossibility, hundreds of feet high, stretching for hundreds of miles, infused with ancient spells, strong enough to keep the dead at bay for thousands of years. A wall made not just of ice, but of magic. And Winterfell? A castle so deeply tied to the old powers that even the crypts beneath it hum with ancient energy. A castle where the springs never freeze, no matter how cold the winter grows. Could one boy truly have done all this? Or was Bran the Builder something more? Some believe he was a green seer, a powerful psychic able to see through time and command the natural world itself, a bridge between man and magic. Not just a builder of stone, but a builder of destiny. Others believe he was part child of the forest, carrying the blood of ancient magic in his veins, able to bind spells into stone, to shape ice and earth with whispered words. And then there are those who say the truth is even stranger, that Bran the Builder was not a single person at all, but a title passed down through generations of powerful seers, a name given to those who fought in silence against the coming of the Long Night, a secret order hidden behind a single legend. When Bran Stark of Winterfell, the boy who fell, the boy who dreamed, becomes the three-eyed raven, he glimpses moments from the distant past. He sees the wall being built. He sees the great lords and ancient heroes of the North, and perhaps he sees himself. Maybe the magic of the Green Seers doesn't just show visions. Maybe it binds souls across time. Maybe Bran the Builder never truly died. Maybe he simply waits, reborn when needed, rising from the cold earth when winter comes again. It would explain why Bran Stark's journey feels so heavy, so fated, why he is drawn to the wall, to the past, to the old gods. Because he isn't just a boy of Winterfell, he is a memory walking in flesh, a builder of walls, a protector of the realms of men, not just once, but forever. The Targaryens were born from fire, forged in the crucible of dragons and magic, the last dragon lords of Valyria, the blood of old Valyria itself. But wherever fire burns brightly, shadows gather just beyond. Its light And the Targaryens have always carried a shadow, madness. Again and again, generation after generation, Targaryens have slipped into insanity, murdered their kin, burned their cities, whispered to shadows that no one else could see. The official histories say it's simple, too much inbreeding, too much pride. But there is another theory, one as cold and slow as a glacier carving through stone. Maybe the madness isn't a flaw. Maybe it's a curse. Something older than Valyria, something woven into the blood of dragons long before they ever set foot in Westeros. Some believe that when the Valyrians first learned to tame dragons, when they reached into the fires of the earth and pulled monsters into their service, they awakened something, not just beasts, but spirits, old, hungry powers slumbering in the molten deeps, and those powers did not come without a price. Magic in Game of Thrones is never free. It twists, it devours, it takes just as much as it gives. The theory goes that the dragon lords of old Valyria, in their arrogance, bound not just the dragons, but themselves to these fiery forces. Their bloodline became a conduit for that ancient, volatile power. And in that bond was planted a seed of madness, a whisper, a hunger, a tendency toward extremes, passion, rage, brilliance, cruelty. It's why Targaryens are capable of such greatness and such horror, why a single Targaryen can birth both a Daenerys, a breaker of chains, and an heiress, a destroyer of cities. Every time a Targaryen is born, they say, the gods toss a coin. But maybe it's not the gods tossing that coin. Maybe it's something far deeper, something burning in the blood, something waiting behind those violet eyes. It's why Daenerys, despite her kindness and dreams, begins to hear the whispers of fire. Burn them all, they seem to say. You are the dragon. It's why Viserys, poor doomed Viserys, cracks under the weight of a crown he could never claim. And it's why even Jon Snow, once he learns of his Targaryen blood, recoils from it, because some part of him feels it, the pull. The madness isn't a defect. It's a reminder, a chain that binds the Targaryens to the dragons they once claimed, to master. In the end, the blood of the dragon is not a gift, it's a tether, a leash wrapped around the soul, a whispering fire that promises glory but demands sacrifice. And the flames never forget. They only wait, burning low and patient, for the next dreamer, the next mad king, the next dragon reborn. In the cold forests of the north, where the snows fall heavy and the nights stretch long, the weirwood trees stand silent, white bark, smooth, as old bones, blood-red leaves, faces carved into the trunks, ancient and solemn, watching, always watching. The old gods, the first men believed, lived in the weirwoods. When you prayed at their roots, when you whispered secrets beneath their crimson leaves, you were speaking to something older than kings, older than castles, older even than men. But what if the weirwoods are more than just vessels for prayer? There's a theory as slow and haunting as a snowfall at midnight that the weirwoods are alive. Not alive like animals. Not even alive like men, alive in a different way. They see, they listen, they remember. When Bran Stark slips into the skin of the weirwoods during his visions, he doesn't just observe, he feels. He feels the wind against the bark, the blood of fallen warriors sinking into the earth, the cold creeping into the stone faces carved in ages past. The theory suggests that the weirwoods are a kind of living memory, a network stretching across the north, rooted in magic and time. Every secret whispered at their feet, every prayer, every death, every betrayal, stored, carried forward through the roots, shared across miles of frozen ground. The children of the forest, the ones who first carved the faces, understood this. They knew the trees were not just symbols, they were guardians, windows and doors, and perhaps sometimes prisons. The Starks' deep bond with the weirwoods is no accident either. It's why their godswood stands untouched, a patch of sacred ground even when all other customs are forgotten. It's why Ned Stark prays there in solitude, whispering things no one else would hear, but the trees would. And maybe, just maybe, it's why Bran was drawn to them so powerfully, because he was meant to become part of the memory, not a king, not a lord, but a bridge between flesh and root. But if the weirwoods remember everything, every joy, every murder, every war, then they must also feel it, the pain, the sorrow, the endless weight of time. The theory suggests that the sadness of the north, the way the land feels heavier, more haunted, is because the weirwoods are mourning. They have watched too many seasons of blood. They have seen the same mistakes made again and again. They remember the long night. They remember the betrayal of men against the children. They remember the breaking of pacts, the burning of forests, the silencing of songs. And so they stand, silent and grieving, waiting for someone who can hear them again, someone who can remember alongside them, someone like Bran. In the end, the weirwoods are not merely trees. They are the heart of Westeros, beating slowly beneath the snow and stone, ancient, patient, and very much awake. Beneath the sun-bleached stones of Old Town, under the gleaming spires of the High Tower, there is a quiet conspiracy, old, cold, and patient. The maesters of the citadel, the keepers of knowledge, the builders of chains. At first glance, they seem like scholars, healers, learned men in grey robes, students of history, stewards of peace. But there's a theory, slow and unsettling, like a creeping fog across the harbour, that the maesters had a far greater purpose, that they were not just keepers of knowledge, they were executioners of magic. Long ago, Westeros was a land alive with wonder. Dragons ruled the skies. Children of the forest whispered to the trees. Giants roamed the far north. Sorcerers and seers shaped the fates of kings and queens. But magic is a wild, dangerous thing. It does not obey laws. It does not kneel to logic. And so the maesters, men of reason, of science, of human order, declared war on it. Not with swords, but with silence, with skepticism, with cold, slow forgetting. The maesters taught that magic was superstition. They insisted dragons were simply beasts, that the children of the forest were myths, that green seers were madmen. They built a world where knowledge ruled, and mystery was quietly smothered under layers of ink and steel. Even Maester Luwin, kind, patient Luwin, who loved the Stark children as his own, dismissed Bran's visions, waved away his dreams of the three-eyed crow, told him there was no such thing as magic anymore. Not because he was cruel, but because he believed. He believed that magic led only to chaos, and chaos to war, and war to suffering. Better a world ruled by facts, by crops and coin, than by dragons and shadows. Some say it was the citadel that plotted the death of the dragons after Aegon's conquest, that they whispered in the ears of kings, encouraged the building of dragon pits, cages, to weaken the beasts. And when the dragons grew smaller and weaker, the maesters nodded quietly. Victory, because a world without dragons was a world where men could rule, not magic. But magic, like a slow-burning fire, never truly dies. It slumbered in the veins of greenseers, in the frozen breath of the others, in the whisper of the weirwoods, waiting for the day it would rise again, whether the maesters wished it or not. And when Daenerys Targaryen's dragons were born from fire and blood, a shiver ran through the foundations of the citadel, because they had spent centuries chaining the world. And now the chains were breaking. The maesters in their quiet halls of learning may have been right to fear magic, but in trying to kill it, they forgot the oldest truth of all. You can bind fire, you can smother dreams, but you cannot kill wonder. You cannot silence the old gods, the dragons, the storms. They only sleep, and one day they wake, hungry for the sky. Beyond the wall, where the wind screams like lost souls and the stars seem colder, they wait. The others, the White Walkers, figures of nightmare and death, born from ice and silence, enemies of the living, bringers of endless winter. Or so the songs say. But what if the songs are wrong? There's a theory, slow and mournful like a dirge sung beneath a weirwood tree, that the others were never meant to be monsters, that they were once something else entirely. Victims. Long ago, before men crossed the narrow sea, before the Andals raised their iron swords, Westeros belonged to the children of the forest. Tiny, fierce, magical beings who lived in harmony with the land. But when the first men arrived, axes in hand, they cut down the sacred trees. They burned the forests. They spilled blood into the very earth the children had worshipped. War followed. A war that children could not win through force alone. So, the legends say, the children turned to their darkest magic. They captured men, twisted them, remade them, and thus were born the others. Weapons made from men turned into cold, beautiful horrors, the ultimate defense. But like all weapons, they turned on their makers. The long night fell, and the world froze. What if the others were not just mindless villains? What if they were betrayed, created to defend a dying people, then abandoned when the war was won? What if the others remember the betrayal, remember the abandonment, remember the grief of being made into something unnatural, then cast aside like broken swords? Their march south, their raising of the dead, their pursuit of the living might not be an act of conquest. It might be an act of mourning, a demand for recognition, for vengeance, for justice. Think of their actions. They do not slaughter wantonly. They raise the dead not to destroy, but to gather, to rebuild their numbers, to replace what was lost. Their king, the Night King, never speaks, but perhaps his silence says everything, a scream swallowed by centuries of ice. Even their weakness, dragon glass, Valyrian steel, is not random. Those are the tools of magic, the tools of betrayal. The children of the forest created them, and they are the only things that can unmake what the children wrought. The others, then, are not just enemies of life. They are echoes of a broken past, marching not toward conquest, but toward remembrance, toward a reckoning. In the end, the war between ice and fire is not simply a battle of good versus evil. It is a wound reopening, a debt long unpaid, a story of sorrow so deep that even death could not end it. And the snow will fall, and the wind will howl, and the world will remember what it tried so hard to forget. From the cold stones of Winterfell to the black walls of Castle Black, to the endless fields of snow and sorrow beyond the wall, one figure walks through the story like a shadow carved in frost. Jon Snow, the boy who knew nothing, the bastard son of Winterfell, the Lord Commander who never wanted a crown. And there's a theory, as bittersweet as a last song sung before a doomed battle, that Jon Snow was never meant to win, that his destiny, from the moment he drew breath, was to lose everything, to carry the burden no one else could. Because saving the world was never going to be a victory. It was always going to be a sacrifice. The signs are everywhere, if you know how to look. Jon's life is shaped by loss. He is raised believing he is a Stark, yet never fully accepted as one. He falls in love with Ygritte, only to lose her to war. He rises to power at the Wall, only to be betrayed by his own brothers. He finds a new family in the wildlings, only to see them slaughtered. Over and over, Jon chooses duty over happiness, over love, over power. Because he carries a secret burden, a destiny bigger than crowns and battles. When he learns his true heritage, that he is the son of Rhaegar Targaryen and Lyanna Stark, it isn't a gift, it's a curse. It places him at the center of every struggle, the North versus the South, the living versus the dead, the past versus the future. He belongs to all sides and to none. The prophecy of Azor Ahai, The prince who was promised speaks of a hero who must make a terrible choice. He shall temper his sword in the heart of the one he loves. Jon's story echoes this sorrow. He kills Daenerys, the woman he loves, because she becomes a tyrant. He tempers the sword not of steel, but of sacrifice. He chooses the realm over his heart. He chooses death over glory. Even before Daenerys, Jon understood. To lead is to serve. To love the realm is to suffer for it. It's why he never truly seeks the crown. It's why he recoils when offered power. He knows too well what power costs. And so, when the final victories are won, when the wars are over, when the Iron Throne is melted into nothing but slag and memory, Jon Snow does not sit in triumph. He is exiled, banished to the edge of the world he saved, forgotten by history, unknown by the songs, just another ghost in the snow. But that is the heart of it. That is what makes him the true hero of this story. Because real saviors, real kings, are not crowned with gold. They are crowned with silence and sorrow and sacrifice. Jon Snow's story isn't about seizing the world. It's about giving it away, about letting it live, even if he cannot live fully within it. He is the sword that was forged in sadness, the king who was crowned by loss, the wolf who guarded the realm of men and asked for nothing in return. And somewhere beyond the wall, among the falling snow and the whispering trees, he walks still, a king without a crown, a hero without a song. But the North remembers, and the old gods sleeping in their weirwood groves remember too. Stretching from the frozen seas to the shadowed mountains, higher than 100 castles stacked end to end, there it stands. The wall, a marvel, a mystery, a memory carved in ice. But what if the wall isn't just a wall? There's a theory, old and slow and deep, that the wall is alive. Not alive like a beast, not alive like a man, alive like a spell, a force bound by magic older than kings, older even than the Night's Watch who guards it. When the first men and the children of the forest fought side by side against the others, they didn't just build the wall to block their path. They bound them, locked them away behind a barrier of ice, stone, and spells woven by the old gods themselves. The wall doesn't merely stand, it remembers, it listens, it hates. Think of how no White Walker could cross it, how even cold hands, half dead, half alive, could not pass through its gates. The wall doesn't just repel physical threats, it repels sorrow, grief, death. It is a shield not just of matter, but of memory. Some believe there is a final secret hidden deep within the wall's heart, a last weapon, a last prison. The Night King's true army, the ones who could not be killed by fire or steel, slumbering in the ice, frozen for 1,000 years, waiting. It would explain why the wall is so impossibly massive, why it was built with powers that even the maesters cannot explain. Because it isn't just a defense, it's a warning, a shackle, a cry for vigilance carved in frozen stone. And the old stories say that when the horn of winter, the legendary horn that can shatter the wall, is sounded, it won't just bring the wall down. It will wake whatever sleeps inside. The breaking of the wall is more than the fall of a fortress. It's the breaking of an ancient pact, the unleashing of something the world forgot, but the old gods remembered. Jon Snow dreams of the wall weeping blood, visions of ice cracking, rivers of red pouring forth, visions of a wall that is not just cold, but angry. Because the wall is not a monument, it is a wound, and wounds, when torn open, do not bleed. Quietly, they scream, and all the long-forgotten monsters that once were sealed away will come forth again, riding the winds of winter, bearing the silence of 1,000 dead ages. When the wall falls, the world will not simply be colder, it will remember, and it will shudder. Once there was a little girl from Winterfell, wild, fierce, full of laughter and fire. Her name was Arya Stark, but the world has a way of sanding away your edges, of whispering your name into the winds until it's lost forever. There's a theory, sorrowful and quiet as fallen snow, that Arya's true journey wasn't about becoming stronger. It was about disappearing. When Arya fled the Red Keep after Ned Stark's death, she wasn't just running from the Lannisters. She was running from herself, from her innocence, from her childhood, from the part of her that still believed in songs and heroes. She wandered through fire and famine, through battlefields and brothels and bleeding streets, and each step stripped a little more of Arya Stark away. When she crossed the narrow sea to Braavos, when she entered the House of Black and White, it wasn't just an escape, it was an offering. To be no one, they said. You must give up everything you are. And Arya, desperate, broken, angry, gave her memories, her laughter, her name. Piece by piece she laid them at the feet of the many-faced god. In the House of Black and White, names are death, because names are attachment, names are hope, names are love. And love, in a world so cruel, can be the deadliest weakness. Arya trains. She learns to wear faces, to speak lies, to kill with a whisper and a kiss. But the real cost isn't the blood on her hands. It's the hole in her heart, the emptiness where Arya Stark used to be, even when she rejects the final step, even when she claims back her name. There's a quiet question lingering. Did she ever really come back? When she returns to Westeros, she carries herself like a shadow, smiling less, speaking softer, moving like a ghost through halls that once sang with her childhood laughter. She kills Walder Frey, but there is no joy in it. She rides south to King's Landing, but vengeance sits cold on her shoulders. She becomes the face of justice for House Stark, but at what cost? Arya is no longer the little girl who chased cats through Winterfell. She is no longer the sister who teased Sansa, who adored Jon, who dreamed of heroes. She is something else now, something harder, sharper, lonelier. In the end, Arya does not settle in the rebuilt north. She does not marry or rule or plant her roots in Winterfell's soil. Instead, she sails west, into the unknown, into the silent seas beyond the maps, searching for something she cannot name, perhaps searching for the piece of herself she left behind long ago, in a godswood under falling snow, when she first picked up a wooden sword and dreamed of a different life. Arya's journey was never about vengeance. It was about survival, about transformation, about the terrible price of becoming what the world demanded and forgetting who you were meant to be. She is the wolf without a pack, the girl without a name, the wind that slips between the stones of ruined castles and forgotten graves. And somewhere, across the grey waves, beneath a sky that no maester ever mapped, Arya Stark, or what remains of her, sails on, still searching, still fighting, still dreaming. While kings clashed and dragons soared, while lords plotted and queens burned cities to ash, one soft voice, one gentle heart moved quietly through the chaos. Samwell Tarly, the coward, the craven, the joke, or so the world thought. But there's a theory, soft as falling snow and steady as the tide, that Samwell was the true hero of Westeros, the unnoticed savior whose kindness and knowledge saved more lives than any sword or crown ever could. From the moment we meet him, Sam is out of place, a lord's son who fears battle, a brother of the Night's Watch who can barely lift a sword, a scholar trapped in a world of warriors. Yet it is Sam who discovers truths others ignore. It is Sam who reads the ancient texts that others have forgotten. When the White Walkers rise, it is Sam, not a knight, not a king, who first learns that dragonglass can destroy them. When the great minds of Westeros bicker and fight, it is Sam who quietly uncovers the truth about Jon Snow's birth. When the lords of the realm scramble for thrones and titles, it is Sam who reminds them that knowledge, not ambition, is the true path to survival. Again and again, Sam's actions ripple outward, unseen but unstoppable, saving Gilly and her child from certain death, saving Jon from despair and doubt, saving the entire Night's Watch when the time came to choose between survival and pride. And yet, Sam never seeks glory, never demands songs, never tries to sit on thrones or lead armies. He simply does what must be done, because Sam, in his quiet, unassuming way, understands something most of Westeros has forgotten. Victory isn't about who wields the sword. It's about who holds the memory. While lords fall and kings burn, Sam guards the stories, the cures, the ancient warnings. He is a bridge between past and future, between the dying magic of the old world and the fragile hope of the new. The books and the show alike, Sam's journey mirrors another great figure from our own legends, Samwise Gamgee, the quiet companion, the overlooked savior, not the hero of songs, but the hero of hearts, the one who carries the burden when the world falls apart. By the end of the saga, Sam survives, not through swordplay, not through power, through resilience, through knowledge, through compassion. He lives, he endures, he remembers, and in a world shattered by war and betrayal, where the great houses crumble and the old ways die, it is memory that rebuilds. It is knowledge that heals. It is quiet kindness, not roaring dragons, that brings the dawn. Samwell Tarly, the slayer of White Walkers, the protector of books, the quiet, sturdy heart of Westeros. In the end, it was never the kings who saved the realm. It was the boy who refused to let fear, cruelty, or ignorance define him. The boy who kept walking, the boy who kept believing, the boy who remembered. In the beginning, there was only a boy who loved to climb, a boy who dreamed of flying. Bran Stark. But dreams have a price, and some theories, whispered like warnings among ancient trees, say Bran's story was never about becoming a king. It was about becoming something else entirely, something older, colder, darker, the new Night King. The seeds of this theory are planted early, when Bran falls from the tower, when his body breaks, but his mind begins to open. Visions, whispers, doors that should never be unlocked. The three-eyed raven finds him, teaches him to see through time, to warg through skin and leaf and stone. But the magic that saves Bran is not kind. It is not clean. It is the same magic that created the first Night King, the magic of the children of the forest, a ritual of pain, of transformation. When Bran enters the weirwood net, he does more than watch. He touches the past. He changes it. And magic, once disturbed, does not forgive. In one vision, Bran reaches for the young Hodor and breaks him. Hodor's mind shatters across time. The boy becomes the man, becomes the broken shell. Hold the door. Bran's touch is not safe. It reshapes lives. It reshapes destiny. If he could break Hodor, could he not also awaken darker things? Could he not, in his desperate attempts to fix the future, have bound himself to the past in ways he could not escape? The theory suggests that Bran, trying to prevent the Long Night, warged too far back, reached too deep, and in doing so, he became the very thing he feared. The Night King. The spiral symbols of the others, those eerie, frozen mandalas, mirror the patterns of the weirwood roots. The other's connection to ice and memory echoes Bran's growing power. In this theory, the Night King was not just an ancient enemy. He was a sacrifice, a boy who fell too far into magic, a boy who tried to fly and became something terrible instead. It would explain why the Night King seemed so fixated on Bran, why he hunted him, not with hatred but with inevitability, because the Night King wasn't trying to destroy Bran. He was trying to complete him, to bring the cycle full circle, to pull the boy who flew into the skin of winter and death where he always belonged. It would explain why Bran, after the final battle, seemed so strangely detached, so otherworldly, why he does not seek vengeance, why he does not grieve, why he does not even seem fully human anymore, because Bran Stark, crowned king of the Six Kingdoms, is not just a ruler. He is the memory of the world, the cold, endless eye that watches over all things. Not a boy, not a lord, but something else, something the world needed, something the world should fear. The last weirwood, the last green seer, the last Night King. Long before the first king wore a golden crown, long before the first sword was forged, there were the children of the forest, small as shadows, old as stone, mysterious as the sighing winds through the weirwood groves. The songs say they are gone now, lost, extinguished by war and time and the cruel cold hand of men. But there's a theory, whispered like the rustling of dry leaves, that the children never truly disappeared, that they are still here, still watching, still waiting, hidden. The children of the forest were masters of hiding, even when they walked, openly among the weirwoods. Their magic was subtle, not loud like dragon's fire, but deep, rooted in earth and bone and memory. They could wear the faces of animals, they could blend into trees, they could listen through the leaves. When the first men came with bronze and fire, the children survived. When the Andals came with steel and faith, the children adapted. When the Targaryens came with dragons, the children watched. Always they endured, not through conquest but through silence. Some believe they still dwell in the darkest corners of Westeros, in the endless forests of the far north, where no human foot has tread for centuries. In the black swamps of the Neck, where the Crannogmen whisper to spirits that others call myth. Even in the shadows of the Isle of Faces, where the weirwoods grow thick and twisted, and no maester dares set foot. There are tales of green dreams still whispered among the Crannogmen, tales of old gods who answer prayers not with words, but with visions. Tales of woods where the trees bleed if you cut them, where the roots seem to move, where faces watch from every bark and branch. The theory suggests that the children are not extinct. They are waiting for the day when men forget their cruelty, waiting for the day when the world needs them once more, waiting as only ancient things can wait, without anger, without hope, only endless patience. And perhaps they have already moved again, silently shaping the fate of Westeros. Perhaps it was their whisper that called Bran Stark north. Perhaps it was their hidden hand that pushed Jon Snow toward his destiny. Perhaps the godswood trees, the heart of the old faith, are still listening and still answering. Because magic, like memory, never truly dies. It sinks deep into the soil. It hides among the stones. It flows through the veins of the earth itself. The old gods were never gods at all. They were the children, and they are not gone. They are merely unseen, eyes in the bark, breath in the wind, dreams in the blood, and when the world needs them once again, they will rise from the roots, from the rivers, from the earth itself, silent, patient, watching, always. In the center of Westeros, where rivers weave like silver threads and mists curl forever over dark waters, there lies a place few remember and fewer still dare approach. The Isle of Faces. An island in the middle of the God's Eye. A place where time itself seems to hold its breath, and there's a theory, old as moss, silent as snowfall, that the Isle of Faces is not just a sacred ground, it is the true heart of all the magic in Westeros. And it is still alive. Long ago, during the Age of Heroes, when the first men and the children of the forest ended their brutal war, they sealed their peace with the Pact, a sacred agreement made at the foot of the weirwood trees on the Isle. The first men would honor the old gods. The children would retreat to the deep forests, and as a sign of this pact, the faces of the old gods were carved deeper and deeper into the weirwoods, so that their gaze would never fade. The Isle of Faces became a place of living memory, a place where every tree watched, every root listened. Some believe the Green Men, ancient mysterious guardians cloaked in vines and antlers, still keep vigil there. Bound to the island, bound to the magic, never leaving, never aging, never speaking. But what is the magic that lies buried in the Isle of Faces? The theory suggests that it is raw magic, the power of life and death woven into the roots of the weirwoods, flowing into the earth and the waters like veins. The children of the forest may have used this power to create the White Walkers. The pact may have been more than a treaty. It may have been a binding spell, a sealing of dangerous forces beneath the isle. The whispers say that deep below the surface, beneath the mists and the tangled roots, there sleeps something ancient and vast, not a dragon, not a beast, but a consciousness, a mind older than man or child, a memory of the world before shape and time. And perhaps it dreams still in uneasy slumber as the wars of men churn above its resting place. Some even believe that Bran the Builder, the legendary founder of House Stark, knew the secret of the Isle, that it was he who used its magic to raise the wall, that it was he who understood that Westeros itself was built atop something ancient, something that could never be fully tamed. Why else would the Isle remain untouched for thousands of years? Why else would even the boldest warriors and kings leave it alone? Fear, reverence, a deep, wordless understanding that some places must not be disturbed. In the end, the Isle of Faces remains the greatest mystery in Westeros, a place untouched by fire or blood. A place where the old gods still gaze without blinking, where the mist is thick with memory, where magic thrums just beneath the surface, waiting, watching, dreaming, and perhaps, one day, waking. To the world, she was a queen, a conqueror, a breaker of chains, Daenerys Targaryen, the last dragon. But beneath the shining titles and the roaring battles, there's a darker theory, quiet and sorrowful, like the last breath of an ancient beast, that Daenerys was never meant to rule. She was meant to burn. She was the final sacrifice to the old magic. The blood of the dragon had always been tied to fire, to prophecy, to death. The Targaryens believed they were different, chosen, blessed. But what if their blood was never a blessing? What if it was a price? From the moment she is born, Daenerys is surrounded by death. Her mother dies in childbirth. Her brother is consumed by madness. Her ancestors burned cities and shattered kingdoms, chasing prophecy and dreams. When Daenerys steps into the fire with her dragon eggs, when she emerges unburnt, it is not just magic. It is a signal. The blood of the dragon answering a call older than Valyria itself, older than the first men, older than the old gods. A call for fire, a call for sacrifice. The dragons are born in blood and flame, but so is Daenerys's destiny. From that moment on, her story is set on a track that can only end one way. Fire, destruction, death. Every city she touches burns, whether she wishes it or not. Astapor, Yunkai, Meereen, King's Landing. Even when her intentions are pure, the fire grows, consuming everything in its path, and her dragons, her children, her symbols, her soul grow larger and wilder, less controllable, more dangerous, because fire cannot be tamed. It only waits for more wood, more breath, more blood. In the end, Daenerys becomes what she was always meant to be, the spark that ends the old world, a fire so great it cannot be ignored. But like all fires, she must burn out. The theory suggests that Daenerys was not betrayed by fate. She fulfilled it. She was the dragon sacrifice foretold by the ancient magics, not to save Westeros, but to cleanse it, to burn away the rot, the cruelty, the endless cycle of thrones and wars. Her death at Jon Snow's hand is not a betrayal of her destiny, it is the completion of it, Azor Ahai, the prince who was promised, was prophesied to temper his sword. In the heart of the one he loved most, not to save her, not to redeem her, to end the magic, to end the dragons, to end the old world, so that something new could rise from the ashes. When Drogon carries Daenerys' body away, flying east into the breaking dawn, it isn't a rescue. It is the last dragon carrying the last sacrifice back to the place where it all began, to the shadowed ruins of Valyria, to the cradle of fire and doom, to bury her in the bones of a dying world. Daenerys Targaryen, the last daughter of Valyria, the last fireborn, the last sacrifice, loved by many, feared by more, understood by few, and remembered always as the girl who burned too brightly for the world to hold. Dragons, the living fire, the last breath of Valyria, the terror and wonder of the skies. But there's a theory, old as broken stone and soft as ash in the wind, that dragons were not simply born of fire, they were born of sorrow. Long ago, when Valyria was still young, the dragon lords were not just kings. They were sorcerers, alchemists, dreamers, and their greatest creation, their greatest crime, was the binding of fire and blood into living flesh. They did not discover dragons, they made them. The dragons were born not from natural eggs, but from dark rituals, from sacrifices, from bargains with forces the Valyrians barely understood. The first dragons, it is said, were forged in the depths of molten mountains, their eggs soaked in the blood of kings and slaves alike, their spirits bound to the will of their masters. But magic demands payment, and dragons, for all their might, are creatures of sadness. Look at them closely, how they wail in loneliness, how they rage when chained, how they seem less beasts and more mournful ghosts. Even Daenerys' dragons, the supposed miracles of the New Age, bear this sorrow. Viserion, killed and twisted into a weapon by the Night King. Rhaegar, shot from the sky in a moment of brutal betrayal. Drogon, left alone, carrying the body of his mother, crying into the cold morning. They were not beasts made to conquer, they were children of loss. The doom of Valyria, that sudden, terrible destruction, was not just an accident of nature. It was the dragons themselves, breaking free from centuries of chains, turning on their makers, burning the empire built on their sorrow. And though new dragons are born, they are always fewer, always sadder, always smaller, because the magic that birthed them is dying, because the grief that bound them is fading into forgotten songs. Perhaps that's why the dragons respond to those with sorrow in their hearts, to Daenerys, to Jon Snow, not just because of blood, but because they recognize kindred spirits, those who have lost everything, those who carry the weight of memory. Dragons are not monsters, they are living laments, flying songs of sorrow, mourning a world that was lost long before any maester's quill touched parchment. And as the world of Westeros drifts toward new rulers, new laws, new wars, the dragons vanish once again, because their time, their sorrow was never meant to survive peace. They are creatures of endings, not beginnings, and perhaps somewhere beyond the shadowed lands they still fly, crying for a home they never truly had. While kings plotted and queens burned, while lords whispered and armies marched, there was a boy with strong arms and kind eyes. A boy who swung a hammer, not a sword, Gendry, a bastard, a blacksmith, a shadow. But there's a theory, whispered like the striking of iron on an anvil, that Gendry was never meant to be forgotten, that he was the rightful prince Westeros needed and never saw. Gendry's blood is strong, stronger than he knows. He is the unacknowledged son of Robert Baratheon, the last pure scion of House Baratheon after Robert's true-born heirs were all slaughtered. He carries the blood of Storm and Stag, the blood of kings. And yet, while others die for crowns, Gendry lives. Hidden among the common folk, he works, he sweats, he survives. There is poetry in this, that the boy with the truest claim to the Stormland's ancient power wears no armor, commands no army, seeks no throne. He builds swords for others to wage wars he'll never profit from. The theory suggests that Gendry's survival through purges, betrayals, wars, and dragons is not luck. It is destiny. The old gods, the Seven, the world itself, something chose him to endure. Not because he was ambitious, not because he was cruel, because he was kind. In the final battles, while lords bicker and rulers fall, Gendry stands ready, forging weapons to defend the living, fighting beside soldiers without demanding banners or titles. In the show, Daenerys finally legitimizes him, makes him Lord of Storm's End. But even that moment feels hollow, because Gendry is not meant for courts and councils. He is meant for the forge, for the earth, for the simple, brutal honesty of hard work and harder survival. Perhaps if Westeros had chosen Gendry, a boy raised among the people, a boy who knew hunger and cruelty and loss, there would have been no more games. Perhaps the wars would have ended. Perhaps the world would have healed. But Westeros never chooses kindness. It chooses ambition. It chooses chaos. And so Gendry, the last true prince, is left to slip back into the crowd, unnoticed, uncrowned, unbroken. In a world of schemers and liars, he remains what he always was, a good man, the rarest crown of all, House Targaryen, the last dragon lords, the blood of old Valyria. For centuries they soared above Westeros, riding dragons, conquering kingdoms, shaping the world. But there's a theory, old as volcanic stone and bitter as ash, that the Targaryens were not just rulers touched by fire. They were cursed by it. The blood of the dragon, so prized and so feared, was a blessing at first, but also a poison, a slow, creeping madness woven into their veins. Generation after generation, the Targaryens married brother to sister, mother to son, to keep the blood pure. But blood is not meant to be pure. Blood is meant to mix, to change, to flow like a river, not stagnate like a poisoned pond. The theory suggests that the Targaryens' greatest strength, their dragons, their magic, their blood, was also their slow undoing. Madness was the price of their power. Rhaegar, the noble prince who loved music and prophecy, abandoned reason in pursuit of destiny. Viserys, the beggar king, raged and wept and crumbled under the weight of a crown he never wore. Daenerys, the breaker of chains, could not resist the call of fire when grief and betrayal tore at her heart. Even the mad King Aerys, once wise, once promising, descended into fire and slaughter, dreaming of burning cities and laughing at the screams of the dying. The blood curse of House Targaryen was not simply mental illness. It was magic, a magic born of fire and sorrow, a magic that whispered in their dreams, a magic that demanded loyalty to flame above all else. Dragons are not creatures of reason. They are creatures of hunger and instinct, and the dragon lords, in binding themselves to dragons, bound themselves to that same hunger, the hunger for fire, the hunger for destruction, the hunger to rule, no matter the cost. The Targaryens who stayed closest to the old magic, the ones who dreamed of dragons, who bathed in prophecy, were often the ones who fell first. The blood whispered louder in them. It is no accident that House Targaryen ends not with a great king, but with a broken girl and a broken boy, Daenerys and Jon, two children of fire, forced to make impossible choices. Two lives torn apart by a past they could never escape. In the end, the blood of the dragon is a song of sorrow, a song of soaring heights and tragic falls, a song of fire and ash. And though the dragons may sleep once more, and the Iron Throne may be melted into nothing, the curse lingers, in blood, in memory, in dreams, waiting for the next heart brave enough, more foolish enough, to answer the call. In the great courts of Westeros, where bloodlines are weapons and history is a battlefield, there is a man who does not fit, small of stature, sharp of wit, wounded in soul, Tyrion Lannister, the imp, the halfman, the joke. But there's a theory, whispered in the back rooms of taverns and in the darkest pages of forgotten tomes, that Tyrion is more than the shame of House Lannister. He is the last true dragon. The clues are hidden in plain sight. Tyrion's fascination with dragons is no mere curiosity. As a boy, he dreams of dragons. He longs for them. He yearns for the old magic more deeply than any knight or king. When he finally meets Daenerys' dragons, he approaches them not with fear, but with wonder. He touches them, speaks to them, frees them from their chains, and they allow it. Dragons, proud, fierce creatures who burn and devour those they distrust, bow their heads to the small man with the broken body and the unbroken mind. No other outsider, save Daenerys herself, is granted such mercy. Some say it is a fluke, a whim, a moment of chance. But the theory says otherwise. It suggests that Tyrion is not Tywin Lannister's true-born son, that Joanna Lannister, Tywin's beloved wife, was seduced or forced by the mad King Aerys Targaryen. That Tyrion carries not just lion blood, but dragon blood, the blood of Valyria, the blood of kings, the blood of fire. Tywin's hatred for Tyrion runs deeper than disgust. It is personal. It is bitter. It is the hatred of a man who sees in the boy not just weakness, but betrayal. "You are no son of mine," Tywin says with final venomous truth. And perhaps, for once, Tywin is not lying. Tyrion's affinity for dragons, his unmatched political cunning, his unyielding spirit in the face of rejection and cruelty, all these point not to Lannister blood, but to something older, something more dangerous. He is not a lion. He is a dragon disguised in golden chains. In another life, Tyrion might have been a dragon lord, might have soared through the skies, laughing against the wind. But in this life, he is a broken man in a broken world. Still, the fire in him never dies, and maybe that is why, in the final reckoning, it is Tyrion who shapes the fate of Westeros, with no sword, no army, no crown. Only words, only fire, only the quiet, stubborn will of a true dragon. In a world of wolves and lions and krakens, the last dragon walks unnoticed through the ruins, not with a roar, but with a whisper. In the snows of Winterfell, among wolves and cold winds, a boy grew up half seen, half loved, Jon Snow, the bastard, the outsider, the unwanted. But there's a theory, quiet as falling snow, sharp as a blade, that Jon Snow was never meant to be a king or a hero or even a man. He was meant to be a ghost. From the start, Jon is tied to death. His mother dies at birth. His name is whispered with shame. He grows up half invisible, half resented, loved but never claimed. Ghost, his direwolf, is pure white, silent, the only one of his litter with red eyes, the only one who is truly different. And Ghost is not just a companion, he is a mirror. The theory suggests that Jon himself is a ghost. Not literally, but spiritually, a soul displaced, a life meant to live in the cracks between worlds. When Jon joins the Night's Watch, he takes the black, the color of mourning, the color of death. He becomes a brother of the dead. When he is killed at Castle Black, betrayed by his own men, he does not die fully. He returns, changed, colder, quieter, less a man, and more a memory wearing flesh. Jon's life after death is not filled with joy or triumph. It is filled with duty, the weight of prophecy, the endless pull of responsibility. He loves, but cannot stay. He wins, but cannot rule. He lives, but only as a shadow of what he might have been. In the end, when the throne is broken, when the fires die down, Jon is not crowned. He is not celebrated. He is exiled, sent north of the wall, back to the land of ghosts and snow and endless winter. Back where he belongs, because Jon was never meant to sit a throne. He was never meant to bask in the light. He was meant to walk in the shadows, to guard the world from dangers it cannot even see, to be the memory of the old world, surviving quietly in the frost. Jon Snow, the prince who was never promised life, only sacrifice, only loneliness, only a cold road stretching forward, silent as the falling snow, a road with no end and no return. There was once a girl with a sword too big for her hand, and dreams too wild for the walls of Winterfell. Arya Stark, the little wolf, the sword in the darkness, the whisper of vengeance on the wind. But there's a theory, fierce and mournful, like a wolf's cry under a blood-red moon, that Arya was never meant to return, that she was the last wolf meant to leave the pack behind. From the beginning, Arya does not fit. She's too wild for embroidery, too fast for lessons, too restless for walls and castles. Her soul belongs to the road, to the sword, to the cold, open skies. When she loses her family, piece by piece, she loses something else too. The last, tethers that might have kept her home. Each death drives her farther from Winterfell, farther from the little girl she once was. When she joins the faceless men, she begins to forget even her own name. Her very self becomes a thing to be worn and shed like a mask. Though she returns to Westeros, though she avenges her family, the theory says she was never truly meant to stay. Wolves run in packs, but sometimes a wolf must run alone. At the end of the story, Arya sets sail west, beyond the maps, beyond the known world, into the great unknown. No thrones, no crowns, no oaths to bind her, just endless ocean, endless stars. The theory whispers that Arya Stark is not merely exploring new lands. She is becoming something Westeros has never seen before. A legend, a ghost, a name carried on the wind, as wild and fierce as the first wolves that ran through the snowdrifts. Of the Old North, she carries the memory of the Starks with her, not in banners or armies, but in her heart. The stubborn loyalty, the cold resilience, the wild spirit that no cage could hold. Arya Stark is not the lady of a great house. She is not the bride of a lord. She is not a quiet shadow at the hearth. She is the last wolf, running west, chasing the last sunset, never stopping, never looking back, because some wolves are not meant to live in packs. Some are meant to run forever, free under the stars. Once there was a boy who dreamed of knights and heroes, of shining swords and songs by the hearth, Bran Stark, the boy who climbed too high, the boy who fell, the boy who rose again. But there's a theory, ancient as the roots of the weirwoods, that Bran's journey was never about kingship or glory. It was about becoming something more, something vast, something terrifying. The theory suggests that Bran Stark did not simply become the three-eyed raven, he became the world itself. When Bran falls from the tower, he does not just break his body, he cracks something deeper, a doorway between the world of men and the timeless memory of the old gods. The dreams he has afterward are not just visions, they are invitations. Invitations to shed his small human shape and become part of something endless. When he journeys north of the wall, when he meets the ancient dying green seer, Bran steps fully into that other existence. He leaves behind his boyhood, his name, even his heart, and when he returns to Westeros, he is no longer truly Bran. He is the memory of every tree, the whisper in every raven's wing, the silent gaze in every face carved into weirwood bark. The theory goes even deeper. Some believe Bran is not just the new three-eyed raven. He is every three-eyed raven that has ever lived, that he exists across time now, touching past and future like a spider weaving a single endless web, that the broken boy from Winterfell has become something closer to a god. He sees the world as it was, as it is, as it might be, but he does not rule it in the way men think of ruling. He watches, he remembers, he endures. In the end, when Bran is named king of Westeros, it is not a crowning, it is a surrender. The world bends the knee to memory itself, not to a boy, not to a man, to something older than kings or thrones. The weirwoods have won, the past has won, and Bran Stark, the boy who dreamed of flying, has become the wind in the trees, the whisper in the leaves, the silent heartbeat of Westeros. He is no longer just Bran. He is the world, watching, forever. There was once a girl who dreamed of songs, of golden-haired princes, of love spun like silk, Sansa Stark, the little bird, the red flower of the north. But there's a theory, slow as a gathering snowstorm, that Sansa's dreams were never meant to come true, that she was meant to be the Queen of Wounds. From the beginning, Sansa's path is woven with betrayal. She is promised to a king only, to see him become her captor. She is used as a pawn by her enemies, discarded by her allies, forgotten by those who swore to protect her. Yet through it all, she does not break. She bends. She bends so far that sometimes she almost seems to disappear. But like the coldest winds of winter, she endures. The theory suggests that Sansa's true power is not in swords or dragons or armies. It is in her understanding of wounds, the wounds of betrayal, the wounds of ambition, the wounds of family and loss and loneliness. She wears these scars not on her skin, but deep inside her heart. Every kindness she offers, every smile she gives is layered atop a memory of pain. And when she finally returns to Winterfell, she is no longer the girl who left. She is something sharper, colder, stronger. A queen not crowned by lords or songs, but crowned by sorrow. When she is named Queen in the North, it is not a fairy tale ending. It is the reward for surviving every cruelty the world could throw at her, and remaining kind, remaining strong, remaining Sansa, the Queen of Winter, the Queen of Wounds. Her rule will not be soft, it will not be gentle, it will be fair, it will be just. It will be rooted in the memory of every hurt she endured, and every hurt she will ensure no one else suffers. In a world built on blood and betrayal, Sansa Stark builds something new, not with fire, not with war, but with patience, with resilience, with the unbreakable will of a girl who learned to survive in a world that devoured little birds. Sansa Stark, the quiet storm, the queen who does not sing, the queen who remembers. Beyond the edge of the maps where the winds shriek like dying ghosts, there stands a wall, not a wall of stone, not a wall of simple ice, something older, something alive. The wall. For thousands of years it has stood, rising higher than any castle tower, stretching farther than the eye can see. It is said to keep the wildlings out. But there's a theory, whispered by old crones and forgotten scribes, that the wall was not built to keep people out, it was built to keep something in, long before the Night's Watch wore black, long before the free folk roamed the forests. There was the long night, a time when darkness walked with 1,000 feet, when the dead would not rest, when the cold itself was a living thing, when the others, the White Walkers, were new and merciless. The theory says that the wall is not merely physical. It is woven with spells, old magic, blood magic. It is a cage, a prison for the ancient forces that once nearly devoured the world. When Bran the Builder raised the wall with the help of giants and the magic of the children of the forest, it was not just to block armies. It was to bind the darkness. The wall hums with ancient power. The very stones seem to breathe in winter. It repels the White Walkers, not through strength, but through memory. It remembers a time before men ruled, a time when the world was wild and terrible, and it holds the darkness back with sheer, frozen will. But nothing lasts forever. When the Night King raises Viserion, when the wall is breached, it is not just a collapse of stone and ice. It is the breaking of a 1,000-year spell. A door opening, the prison walls crumbling, and once that magic is broken, the dead flood south, like a river bursting its banks. The theory suggests that the wall's true purpose was never known to the men who guarded it. The Night's Watch fought wildlings, but the real enemy slept beyond their sight. The true war was not with men, but with the restless dead, with the memories buried beneath endless snows. The wall, like so much in Westeros, was a story half remembered, a warning forgotten, a protection slowly rusting away. And when it fell, the world remembered what it had tried to forget, that some walls are not built to divide, some walls are built to hold the darkness inside, and when they fall, the night comes again. Beyond the wall, in the heart of endless winter, there was a shadow, a king with no crown, a conqueror with no armies of the living, a memory made of ice and sorrow, the Night King. But there's a theory, cold as the wind between the weirwoods, a doom that the Night King was not born evil, that he was made, and worse, that he was made with good intentions. Long ago, before the Andals crossed the sea, before the first men carved their histories into stone, the children of the forest ruled the green lands. They lived in harmony with the earth, with the streams, with the skies. But then came men, carving trees, building fires, turning the sacred groves to ash. The children could not defeat the first men by strength alone, so they turned to magic, to sacrifice, to desperate creation. They captured one of the first men, a warrior, strong and fierce, and plunged dragonglass into his heart. They bound him with spells older than language. They twisted his spirit, and thus was born the first White Walker, the Night King. He was not meant to destroy the world. He was meant to protect the children, to be their weapon against the invaders. But magic is wild, magic is hungry, magic slips its leash when called upon. The Night King turned not just against the first men, but against the children themselves. The creation had no master. It had only its endless hunger for cold, for silence, for death. The theory suggests that the Night King is not evil for evil's sake. He is sorrow embodied, a soul forever trapped between life and death, a king without a kingdom, a god without worshippers. When he raises the dead, he does not do so with malice. He does so out of loneliness. Each corpse, each frozen soldier, is another attempt to fill the endless emptiness inside him. Another soul stolen from the living, so he will not be alone. Even his endless march south is not conquest. It is longing, longing for warmth, longing for a world he can never enter, longing for something he has forgotten he even desired. The Night King's very existence is a tragedy. He is a reminder that when we tamper with the forces of creation, when we try to forge weapons out of sorrow and fear, we make monsters, not from hatred, but from pain. In the end, when Arya's blade strikes true, when the Night King shatters into ice and dust, it is not just a victory, it is a release, a mercy, a return to silence after centuries of walking through a world that had no place for him. And so the Night King, the first of the White Walkers, the ghost of a forgotten war, ends not with a roar, but with a sigh. Gone. At last. Before the castles, before the crowns, before the swords sang their cruel songs, there were the trees. And there were the children of the forest, small and slight, wild-eyed and strange, the first people of Westeros. But there's a theory, soft as moss, sharp as bone, that the children were not merely the first people. They were once gods, the old gods of the forest, the ones who breathed magic into the roots, the ones who listened to prayers whispered beneath the weirwood trees. When the first men came with iron and fire, they did not merely conquer a land. They conquered a way of being, The children fought with tooth and claw and spell, but they could not hold back the tide of men forever. So they bargained. They taught the first men to carve faces into the trees, not out of worship, but out of remembrance. A pact was made. The land would be shared, the old gods honored, the bloodshed ended. But the children faded. Slowly, quietly, they retreated. To the deep forests, to the hollow hills, to the caves that time forgot. And while the Andals crossed the sea and the faith of the Seven took root across Westeros, the memory of the children dimmed, reduced to stories, fairy tales, yet the weirwoods remember, their faces carved by ancient hands, their eyes bleeding red sap, their roots drinking from deep waters, and the children are not gone. Not truly. They sleep in the bones of the land. They dream through the trees. They whisper to the green seers, to Bran, to Bloodraven, to those who still listen. The theory suggests that the children are still shaping the fate of Westeros. Subtly, patiently, they remember when men were young and foolish. They remember promises broken, and perhaps when the White Walkers marched south, when winter swallowed the sun, it was not just man's folly that was punished. It was the old gods reclaiming their dominion. The children of the forest, the true, old gods, watch from the shadows still, waiting, remembering, enduring. In the end, they do not need kingdoms. They do not need crowns. They have the trees, they have the wind, they have the endless patient memory of the earth itself. And that is power, deeper than thrones, deeper than dragons, deeper than any man can ever touch. There was once a place where dragons filled the skies, where mountains wept fire, where men bent the world itself to their will. Valyria, the greatest civilization the world ever knew. The dragon lords, the masters of flame and stone. But there's a theory, old as ash, heavy as regret, that the doom of Valyria was no accident. It was a sacrifice, a catastrophe by design. Valyria was built on blood. Blood magic. Blood sacrifice. The dragon lords carved their power from the bones of the world itself, binding dragons to their will, harnessing the raw fury of volcanoes and storms. They grew arrogant, they grew greedy, and deep beneath the 14 flames, the smoking mountains that crowned their empire, they awakened something they could not control. Some say it was magic grown too wild. Others whisper it was a darker force, an ancient power, older than dragons, older than men. A force that had slumbered beneath the earth, feeding on the blood spilled above. The theory suggests that the doom was not merely a chain of volcanic eruptions, it was a spell gone wrong, or perhaps a spell unleashed. Some scholars claim the dragon lords, desperate to maintain their dominance, attempted a great working, a spell to bind death itself, to cheat the decay of time. But in their pride, they lost control. Instead of binding death, they unleashed it. The mountains erupted. The ground split, the sky turned black with fire and sorrow. And Valyria, the greatest empire the world had ever seen, was reduced to smoking ruin in a single night. Ships passing near the smoking remains reported screams that carried on the wind for years. Dragons turned on their riders, driven, mad by unseen forces. The land itself seemed to twist and boil, forever poisoned. Those few who survived were cursed, their bloodlines weakened, their memories fragmented, their gods silent. The doom was not just a physical destruction, it was a severing, a sundering of power. Valyria was a living wound, still festering centuries later. The Targaryens, fled to Dragonstone before the fall, became the last memory of the Dragon Lords. But even they carried the curse with them. Madness, hubris, the slow, inescapable decay of a people who thought they could master death. The doom of Valyria was a warning written in fire and blood. No empire is eternal, no magic is without cost, no dominion over life and death can last forever. and the land where dragons once soared now weeps quietly under a sky that will never be whole again.